Hey there, welcome to episode 141 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I am your host, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Dan Hugo. If you are not familiar with the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program, which is a production of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation. How about that? If you're not familiar with the foundation, we are in our fourth year. We're focused on innovation. It's right there in the name, in the greater Vegas area. Our purpose statement, in case you're wondering, is to enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better. That means we come up with new ideas about what we should be or could be working on. We come up with creative solutions to ponder, and then we look towards implementation of those solutions. Not everything needs to be code. We used to be the Code for Vegas Foundation, but innovation can take many more forms and is much more inviting, which is what we try to be. Today's title and topic, tuning. If you're familiar with the movie Dark City, hint, but not quite as radical. We'll get into that. Hopefully. Oh, so yeah, we're a 501c6. I'm sorry, let me concentrate. We're a 501c3 public charity. We're a Nevada nonprofit corporation. Like I said, we've been operating for we're in our fourth year. We were formed in June of 2022, though we started some of our efforts a little bit before that. We formally formed our Nevada Nonprofit Corporation, I think it was June 16th, 2022. I am the managing director. We'll get into those empty chairs that I'm sitting next to. In the meantime, hopefully wherever you found this audio program, and hopefully that's more places, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes for today's episode. There are only 2 links, the usual 2, to our homepages, plural, on this, the 28th of October. That's a Tuesday. We normally publish on Tuesday, so that works out nicely. And the time is 7:32 in the morning, 7:32 a.m. Pacific time here in Greater Vegas. I normally say the time earlier in my preamble, but here we are. And we're a 501c3. I don't know why I said C6. I must have some other notions floating around. 501c3 public charity, just in case you're thinking of supporting us financially or in any other ways. So let's innovate for Vegas. The show notes, the summary, thus, our foundation is sounding a bit flat. Some tuning is necessary, even essential, as we move forward in the dark city that is Greater Vegas. I don't know if you heard that production by street car noise. So I mixed some metaphors in there. Tuning as if a musical instrument, and tuning as if from the Dark City movie. The links for today's episode, Innovate for Vegas activity website, sort of our normal person website, innovateforvegas.org, innovate FOR Vegas, no spaces or punctuation, innovate for Vegas, .org. There you will find information about our various initiatives and who's contributing and what we're up to and so on. Our other website, Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Innovate FOR Vegas, no spaces or punctuation, Innovate for Vegas, Foundation, is where you'll find information about the corporation. We are a Nevada nonprofit corporation, as I mentioned. I got to file our 990 for our very, very, very minimal financial transaction history and accumulated donation revenue from our previous tax year, which did end on June 30th. So I think I have like 2 more days. It's just on the to-do list. The joy of a solo effort for the time being. Innovateforvegas.org for what we're up to. Innovateforvegas.foundation for the business side, like who sits on our board of directors. I gotta publish our bylaws to there so people can see them readily. Both of these are backed by GitHub repositories with public pages and so on. So they're not intended to be the latest and greatest of web technologies. They're purely functional. They could always use some redesigning and some fiddling with to make them more useful. Definitely want to be more accessible. As my an East German colleague of mine said many years ago, when there was such a place, we work 24 hours in a day and some we work at night. So burning the candle at both ends, all that stuff. You take your pick. On that note, let's get on with it so we can get on with the week. Tuning over pivoting. Pivoting is a term people use a lot, but we're not really pivoting. This is not about a pivot or anything like this. Pivoting is more a business decision to maintain profitability, to deliver to investors, and so on. We don't do any of those things. We don't have to worry about that. Not really. Tuning is more about adjusting what we are doing today along a longer path, wherein what we are adjusting can be adjusted again and maybe again as needed. So we don't have to make like a fundamental pivot or change in the way we are conducting business or supply chains or product definitions or all that stuff. It's a little bit easier for what we are doing and how we're doing it. By the way, we are also not going to be stopping anytime. We're not going to be stopping time and changing people's lives through psychokinetic manipulation, but the Dark City movie is still good and you should watch it if you have not already. Maybe we will play a role in altering and improving Greater Vegas in various ways, none so mysterious as was the case in that movie. If you wait until the very end of the movie, you'll see where the cover art for today's episode got its inspiration. That is AI generated, by the way. I have no such aesthetic abilities, nor anyone to ask of. These spoken words may not correspond exactly to implementation, sooner or later, or maybe later or sooner. So this is more of an open ideation episode about operating a civic volunteer organization, and this is not a civic tech organization, though civic tech is under the larger civic volunteer umbrella. And do not mistake or confuse the notions. So civic tech, you'll find more civic tech organizations floating around. Whoever wrote this, I guess it was me, but earlier, forgot those words. So don't confuse or overly differentiate. So civic volunteers, civic tech is part of civic volunteerism. Civic volunteerism is a little bit bigger than civic tech, and you will often hear civic tech people, you'll read it on their websites and whatnot, that, but we're not just tech, we're also other things. Well, there you go. Why, just like Code for Vegas, but we aren't just code. Okay, then be clear, starting with the name of the organization. So that's what we're doing. And we do civic volunteerism, including civic tech, but not limited to. So first things first, we need at least 2 additional directors to join our board of directors. I've mentioned this before in passing. Our board of 3 has been a board of 1 since late May of 2025. It was a little bit late in the game to file our annual list update, which would have been 30th of June. So that gave me 4 weeks to try to find new directors. That's what happens when you have directors sitting on your board that don't do the right thing. And while there are some initial outreach by yours truly to try to find some new members, mostly during the summer of 2025, so June, July, August, that outreach bore 0 fruit, which is disheartening a little bit. It has become rather clear in my own travels in this space, civic volunteerism, especially here in Vegas, that people who are not in what I call the one group, I frequently describe the 1990 sort of partitioning of the universe. There are a few variations of this concept with different labels. So mine are the doers, the supporters, and the spectators, if you like. So without a lot of, the one is being the doers, the people that actually take action. They leap before they look. They find an opportunity interesting and want to know more, not tell me when you have free food, that population. So the one group are less inclined to join something like this without a FOMO factor, fear of missing out. So I've not really encountered true one group members other than me, I suppose, or some example thing that they can be a part of rather than joining to create that thing. So ideally, I would encounter people who are interested in the unknown or pursuing, innovation. It's right there in the name again. And indeed, we're actually looking for directors that are interested in enabling that, not necessarily being hands-on. They certainly wouldn't be sent away, but I've been trying to emphasize that to people. You don't have to be a coder. You don't have to be a linguist. You don't have to be anything. You just have to be interested in enabling these things. And of course, you'd be welcome. So this is another reason we have 2 websites. Be a part of the foundation from the governance side, enabling these things to take place. You don't necessarily have to be participating in hackathons or committing to GitHub or things like this. So you could, but we don't really require that, which makes sense, I think. This is not a Vegas thing that, people want to see results before they consider joining up. It's not a Vegas thing, but it is certainly present in the Vegas culture so far from what I've seen in my 12 years living here, certainly in the 4 years, the 4th year that we're doing this. Having at least 3 directors is essential, of course. That's an IRS thing. So we're not in trouble, but we're not in a good way right now, especially as we shift into donation driver initiatives in a little feedback loop. So we have some actual revenue in the form of donations that we can use to cover some new expenses. Our current expenses are nearly zero for the moment. I've talked about this in a previous episode titled Money. I think it was The Money, or maybe it was just Money. I can't remember. But if we do extend our reach and deploy actual initiatives, anything from stickers and t-shirts to cloud hosting to tools and subscriptions to who knows what else, on top of our annual filing fees and domain name renewals, luckily those are, under, $50 for an annual listing fee. Nickels and dimes do add up. So having some donation revenue would be good. We have received donations over the years, but they've been under, small 3 digits. How about that? Or less. Certainly well below the $50,000 cap that was imposed during our first 3 years as a 1023 EZ charity filing. So solo is a steep hill, as it turns out. Being the solo driver of this effort more recently is expensive. If time is money, we could say it is actually expensive from a money standpoint, but removing the financial component, the energy of commitment does not come from the sun, not yet anyway. And while wearing many hats is a trendy thing to do in this world of solopreneurs, it does not keep the inverted pendulum upright all the time. An inverted pendulum is like holding a pencil or a meter stick or something on the tip of your finger and keeping it vertical. You have to pay attention. You have to spend thinking time and motor and coordination. Part of the reason we really need interested and interesting directors on our board, I'm not even going to say, I typed "are on board" instead of "on our board" because I'm, trying to keep that inverted pendulum up. We need these people to help tell our story and engage with others in the greater Vegas area and beyond. Our former board members, both of them, based in Northern California, Sacramento, and Fresno areas. They were not really here locally, so we do need people to tell the story, and being local would kind of help with that. At least one other person. They were not inclined to do any of this, so this is probably the most important qualification of any potential director or directors, is to be interested and to actually take part. As well, locality is about half important. At least one local board member other than myself would be great, I think, specifically for local engagement and outreach, to get to know people, especially if they already know some people here. I have found that engaging with people, especially in the city of Las Vegas, in the city staff, in the economic and urban development, or in technology, they really don't care. Sad to say. This was not true in the old Code for Vegas days, when Code for Vegas was more formally a part of Code for America. This was about 10 years ago. The city's open data program, which still exists today, is a result of the efforts by the original Code for Vegas brigade, although I think that was just before the brigade program became a real thing. So I don't know if it was ever really considered a brigade or if it was just part of Code for America. As well, locality, half as important. At least one local board member, aside from me, then, would be interesting for that outreach. Splitting outreach and planning efforts, though, including our weekly online meetups, takes time away from coding, which is my personal area of expertise, for better or worse, which means, and coding could be like website stuff, some automation tools, and some actual initiative efforts, writing the documentation, writing the specifications, managing the project workflow with our Agile for Volunteers infrastructure, which I'm also developing to enable the Agile methodology, but for people who may or may not come back, which is the nature of volunteerism. So it means the chicken and egg problem is real and a hill to get over, most definitely. There are no enzymes around, so I need all of the activation energy I can get to get over that hill. If you don't remember your high school biology, that's okay. And that is more difficult to come by with all these, it's more difficult to come by with all these hates. I don't know what I was trying to say there. Distractions, certainly. Distractions. Oh no, you know what I was going to try? I was trying to write hats, not hates. Too many hats, too much distraction of cognitive load, task switching, however you'd like to describe it. This is not a new thing. A lot of people describe how humans are not really intended to be multitasking. So it's not optimal by any means, but the solopreneur movement says you kind of have to be cool. So somewhere in there. Luckily, our deadlines are all on the administrative side for now. So we don't have to deliver any initiatives to the world. Nobody is waiting on anything that they know of. When they see what I've come up with and what hopefully more people will collaborate on coming up with, I think people will be impressed. But nobody is counting our minutes yet. So it's filing deadlines, 990 filing deadlines, identifying board members, reaching out to other organizations and so on about collaborations. Yeah, these are things that take time, and they don't necessarily have, well, some have actual deadlines. Some are just about being timely. It's just all stuff on the to-do list. So the chicken and the egg, which comes first? Participation or initiative outcomes? Empirical observation. Oh, I cannot spell. Empirical observation has shown one thing to be true for the last 4 years that we've been doing this, and longer, to be honest. The people of Vegas like to see a thing before they decide whether they want to be a part of that thing. This is not necessarily so with the group of ones, the one group of the 1990, but locating members of the one group is a bit of a challenge. Another reason we would be better off with one or two more people on our board is not only to tell the story and perhaps meet those people in the one group. Hey, tell me about this. What are you a member of? The board of what? What is this? Oh, Innovate for Vegas. What are you guys doing? Well, it's right there in the name. Yeah. In the meantime, if we take this meme literally, the chicken and the egg, we need to have some eggs to hatch. If we take the eggs to be the outcomes of the initiatives, the volunteer effort that goes into them, at least one or two, which means initiatives that can be deployed and used by our fellow locals or anyone else. This does imply software, since, first of all, one person can leverage a lot more input energy into more output. I don't have to build a mechanical thing. I don't have to learn a new language to speak for true language translation. We can automate that. So for better or worse, some software will be in the initial offering of what we deploy, but hopefully it doesn't remain the case. The things to point to, do you want to work on stuff like this? Initiatives we have in various states of description, but much less in the state of implementation, leave us in a sort of a tough place. Thus, one of the values we need to tune is volunteer time assigned to implementation. And let's be honest, that's one dial on one person. And right now he's recording this audio program. Normally we would have some ideation and innovation in the mix to come up with our initiative descriptions, the whole team approach. All of this is in our Agile for Volunteers definition, or the plan, which is inspired heavily by the original Agile, which has been corrupted by the Agile industrial complex, unfortunately. So it's actually a pretty simple structure, but that is done for one or two of our initiatives, enough for a first version of at least one of these, so we can actually press forward and come up with like a version 0.9 beta or something like that. And then hopefully at least one or two more people will say, oh, what's this? This looks cool. Can I be a part of this? Can I work on this? Can I contribute to this? Can I refer a couple of friends, etc.? So tuning, more time on initiative, less time on business, which is really the outreach part, although I still need to find directors. So that means I have to deploy something and say, hey, does anybody want to be a part of this? So I've been emphasizing the finding directors over the implementation. So we got to flip that around. That's where we start now. Glocal. There is a previous episode of this audio program with precisely that title, Glocal, Glocal. And that is episode 125 if you're going to go look for it. If you happen to have seen Up in the Air, the movie, it's yet another movie that I'm referring to today. You may have heard that word in there. Anna Kendrick's character describes it as her sort of her big innovation in the world of firing people. Go see the movie. But it is an actual word, and in that previous episode, I went into more detail about it, the dictionary links and all that, including how it is a part of our Project ACT initiative, the Autonomous Cohort Tessellation. The idea there is to enable people in different locations to discover each other and so on. We'll get to that in a second. So here again, it is a matter of volunteer time. And by the way, I always refer to volunteer time, effort, and expertise because all three of those are important. I'm abbreviating it here. I've just said volunteer time, but be aware that all three of these components do matter. And as well, the insularity, not isolation, but insulation or insularity of the former Code for America Brigade entities, now that the Code for Brigade program was sunset, so all these different entities around the country became independent agents or cohorts. Some are still in operation with differing levels of participation and connectivity and collaboration across. Yeah, that remains to be seen. So these entities and cohorts, which were basically scattered to the wind, unfortunately, to the wind. They have reformed, some of them have reformed under a new umbrella, the Alliance of Civic Technologists. Unfortunately, also ACT, although Project ACT came first, for what that's worth. They're not necessarily collaborating across their various distances. So it's mostly, from what I can tell, from I attended some of their meetings and whatnot, I don't know that they're attempting to collaborate across their localities. To me, that makes no sense. If you have limited participation and you're all working on open source projects that work in localities, everybody's in a locality, you can share things across the open source licensing boundaries. You can collaborate, you can solve similar problems in similar ways, and then differentiate the solutions based on the differences in the problem. Seems to make sense to me. That's kind of how open source works in general. Nobody in Vegas needs to re-implement libc, right? You just reuse the common components and you can collaborate on those easily, or so I've been led to believe by my own rhetoric. So here again, the same chicken and egg with the same approach. This is where Project ACT enters the picture because this notion actually applies to discovery of different cohorts of any size, one or more people, using modern and legacy technologies, the internet, and objects and RSS feeds and RDF, object notations, and maybe even some activity pub. This notion actually applies to discovery of different cohorts of any size using these other technologies, which they already work, which is nice, to enable and encourage connection, communication, and collaboration between any or maybe even all cohorts. Asking others to take time away from their own local first efforts is, empirically again, too much an imposition if they don't know what they're getting into, so they don't look. Thus, again, we need to show rather than tell, at least initially. Without a functioning example, even the best intentioned individuals and cohorts are not always eager to embrace novelty at the earliest stages. This is one of the challenges I've talked about previously with Hacktoberfest. I really wanted to get Project ACT into Hacktoberfest in some way to at least get some sort of feedback, and I still might do that. So my strategy was to do it at the beginning of Hacktoberfest, but I think now that people have spent a month trying to find projects to contribute to, this might be an interesting time to do it. But either way, I don't know that there would be valuable contributions from Hacktoberfest. The notion of Hacktoberfest is fundamentally at odds with ongoing participation in civic volunteer efforts. So unless people actually become inspired to work on civic volunteer open source projects, and to be honest, I don't see a lot of the cohorts or brigades, former brigades, jumping onto that bandwagon. So I don't know if they find it's not a good investment. Maybe. Either way, we're always open, not just for 1 month. Last topic, weekly meetups. The first sacrifice has already taken place. Our weekly initiative meetup must move to invite only. And it's going to be on a brief hiatus first. So after that, we'll go to invite only. The return on investment of that time as a pair of open invite online meetups, which we've had until recently, is not enough to justify having the meetings, but it doesn't justify having two. So the initiative meetup has to switch until we reach a point where we have actual participation on an ongoing basis so that we can actually have initiative meetups. Newcomers and the curious could come to that meeting to learn about our initiatives, but there was more confusion over the difference between this and the other office hours. So we can just keep one. So anybody can come to office hours, but we're not, it would be purely introductory. So the initiative meetup is meant really to be about initiative effort. So, and it doesn't have to be coding, but it's about advancing the cause. And just a little side note here, another thing that confuses people is A lot of people believe that, oh, that's the meeting. And I always try to tell people, well, you can have your own meeting. If you're working on something with 2 or 3 people and you have a good meeting time for you is like Wednesday at 3 in the morning, by all means. But there is a tendency to, oh, okay, we must go to the meeting and that's the only one and so on. So that's something we're going to have to change. So step one, remove the distraction of having a meeting every Monday called the initiative meetup, and we'll migrate to something better, something more useful, something that's more intuitive. The weekly office hours could easily move to bi-weekly until we get the word out in a more useful way. Don't even start with meetup.com. We don't need to go there. Or offer more attractive, shiny objects to draw attention from near and far. Office hours are not high value when they are not attended. Now, I actually reached out in the form of attending various meetups of other cohorts in different parts of the country. So you just have to spend the time and you say, hey, I'm with a different civic volunteer organization. I'm just reaching out to meet other people and see what you're doing and how you're doing it and so on. And then, any possibilities of collaboration, that's where the door seems to not slam shut, but it seems to close gently. Like, yeah, we're too busy on our stuff. Good luck with that, which is unfortunate. I think, I don't know what to say, so I won't. So with the winter season fast approaching, it's already the end of October. There's typically there's some leaning, I suppose, toward holidays for most. Holiday time, holiday distraction, short weeks. November and December seem like good months during which to try this reduced schedule bi-weekly, and we can see what comes of that. The value proposition of any of our online meetups has not really come to fruition yet. There have been good conversations here and there, but there has been very little positive outcome in the way of additional attraction. That is, the point of having an office hours meetup, in our case, is ideally to become interesting to a friend of a friend, right? So someone comes to our meeting and then says, hey, let's go continue that conversation with another colleague, etc. So ideally, we would develop some sort of a critical mass of engagement, whether it's local or not. That simply has not been the case. And I don't know, honestly, I don't know if people just don't know that they can tell somebody else about it. Like, hey, you should go to that meeting and talk about this particular topic. So there's not enough proaction. And I got to be honest, proaction is an essential ingredient. So yeah, with the winter coming, it's a good time to cut back on the schedule and see where that goes. Honestly, I have to check and see so we don't go like Thanksgiving week or so on. So I'll pick the right beginning of the weekly schedule for the next couple of months. Finally, final point of this episode, the value proposition of any of our online meetups has not really come to fruition, as I said. A good office hours meetup would ideally draw 1 or 2 newcomers per month, say, and that has simply just not taken place, as I mentioned. I think this is a matter of getting the word out, but also it's an indication that the civic tech and civic volunteer universe does tend to keep to itself, which I've kind of described already. They just don't. No one comes to our meetups from other organizations, so I would go to theirs, and while I was not shooed away, I was welcomed. There wasn't a sense of like, hey, we can work together. No, I don't think so. And I just fundamentally don't understand that. I think I've touched on this before, but if there's a shortage of volunteers in your neighborhood and there's another organization not far away, like on the same planet, that has a similar problem, if you add up your cohort sizes, you'll say, oh, what if we find the things that we have in common that we need to implement or investigate or whatnot and collaborate on those things? That's how open source works. This is something I already knew, but changing it is something we should pay attention to in the sometime soon, but not sooner. So soon, but not sooner or later. It's basically the focus of Project Act. It's reaching out beyond, the Vegas locality in our case. I just don't know that the culture supports that so far. It's a kind of a culture shift. It's part of the Project Act notion is to switch from a top-down, centrally planned effort to a bottom-up, self-organizing, where discovery is the important part. So as long as you know about what other people are working on, you might be able to find, even temporary collaboration. You don't have to join 12 organizations. You just say, hey, I'm working on something that might benefit 12 organizations. here's what we're working on. You can discover it. You can contribute to it. We'll contribute to your thing, whatever it is, right? It's the way to leverage a limited population of people that are actually spending the time, effort, and expertise to make these things happen. And ideally, over time, when you are able to deploy or show rather than tell, whether it's code or not. So I'm simplifying it to a coding notion here, but it could be any aspect of your civic volunteer initiative output. But as people notice those things, ideally more people will lean in and say, oh, I didn't know people were working on this. How can I be a part of that? So the take home, and I think my voice is just going to make it today. The weather has been all over the place. So depends on what time of day it is and how much I've been breathing, which I really got to stop doing. The air is the air and it affects my, how I can speak into a microphone. Anyway, on that note, I thank you for listening. As always, I thank you for your consideration. If you would like to be supportive of our organization in any way, including showing up for our meetings, even if they are bi-weekly for the remainder of 2025, maybe you're thinking, hey, that Smarter City Hackathon for 2026 sounded interesting. How could I be a part of that? That's a good question. You can come to one of our office hours meetings for an initial conversation if you like. You can ponder financial contributions at some point, though we really don't ask for anything at this time. But over time, as we start getting some stuff up and running, we might come and ask you again. On that note, thank you for listening. And yeah, that's it. Be safe out there.